Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya yato anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhigyaswarat Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye Muhyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatratra Sargo Mrisha Dhamna Swena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi Nigamakalpataror Galitam Phalam Shukamukad Amritadrava Sanyutam Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Muhuraho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavukaha. So we now enter the second chapter of the eighth Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we are entering the wonderful story of Gajendra Moksha. So Shukabrahma Rishi narrated the first four Manus on the fourth Manu Tamasa during his reign. During that Manvantara, he said there was the great story of the king of elephants Gajendra rescued by Srihari. So Parikshit asked more about it. So Shuka Brahma Rishi begins that wonderful divine story. So Shuka Brahma Rishi says there was a great mountain called Trikuta, and this is a very beautiful mountain. Here we see the quality of the poet in Shuka Brahma Rishi. The word for both sage and a poet in Sanskrit is kavi. So a true poet is one who is situated in truth and also able to observe every aspect of it and describe it very clearly. So, being both a poet and a sage, a true kavi, Shuka Brahma Rishi describes this mountain and its surroundings so beautifully with such sensitivity. So, when he describes this, we can see how every single detail is observed with great sensitivity and with great observation, and this happens only when one is not absolutely caught in one's own egoic activity. So, even when we walk in nature, if we are lost in thought, we don't observe what is there around us. When we are completely free, then we can observe every little detail that's there very effortlessly. So, in this way, Shuka Brahma Rishi describes with effortless beauty the wonder of nature that this mountain is Trikuta, where the Gajendra, the elephant king, resides with his herd. So, this mountain is a wide and tall mountain. It has three peaks. We can visualize this, and it brings the whole scene to us in our mind's eye. This mountain is a huge mountain with three peaks, each peak shining like gold and silver with the sunlight reflecting on it, and it is surrounded by ocean. So, this is an island, a huge island with a giant mountain, and the mountain is so big that it pretty much covers the entire island. And the mountain has valleys within it, it has lakes within it, it has rivers within it, and the mountain covers the entire landscape of the island. And there is ocean with its waves hitting this beautiful mountain on all sides. And the mountain itself is charming to look at, the three peaks shining, and many small peaks as well, each with various precious stones and minerals. And there is full of trees and creepers and shrubs of all kinds. There are many caves in this mountain, and these caves are visited by many celestial beings such as Gandharvas, the celestial musicians, the Siddhas, who are mystic beings with powers, and so on. So, such caves are visited by these great beings, and there are animals of all kinds roaming around, lions and tigers and wolves and boars and all the various kinds of animals. The mountain is so rich with minerals, it's got emerald on its sides, and the water is turning green by hitting the emerald, it is said. And the lakes within the mountains are so clear, the water is crystal clear, the rivers are flowing with such beauty. And Shuka Brahmarishi describes the various gardens there. There is a beautiful garden called Rituman, and this garden especially is graced with various celestial trees. He describes all the trees. Even in Ramayana, Valmiki similarly describes all the trees that are present, and thereby giving a clear idea of the nature of the forest at the time. Similarly, Shuka Brahmarishi also describes that there are various trees such as coral trees, acacias, mango trees, palm trees, coconut trees, banyan trees, neem trees, pine trees, vines, sugar canes, plantains, rose apples, plum trees, wood apples, lemons. So many wonderful trees are in this celestial looking garden called Rituman in this island, in this mountain island. And the lakes are filled with lilies and lorises, and there is all kinds of beautiful birds and bees flying around in these lakes and these rivers. The various birds such as chakravakas, cranes, and chatakas, so many beautiful bird species like ducks and geese and cranes are mentioned, and they are all flying around. And the particular garden is filled with lakes that are having pollen of lotuses floating on them, along with fishes and tortoises swimming in them. So, the beautiful description of this whole garden is so visually evocative, the way Shuka Brahmarishi gives us. And the mountain is filled with fragrance everywhere because so many fragrant flowers are blooming, such as yellow jasmine, white jasmine, spring flowers, lilies, lotuses, as already mentioned, and all of them are lining up this particular garden as well. So, this is the scene of this mountain, and especially this particular garden in this mountain. And the whole mountain is so serene and beautiful looking. There, in this particular garden, one day, the leader of the herd of elephants called Gajendra, Gajendra literally means king of elephants, Gaja means elephant. So, Gajendra, the king of elephants, he was roaming around with his family. He has a big family, many female elephants as his wives, and many children, small elephants, and they were all roaming in this garden, breaking bamboos and eating them, and eating various f- leaves and various fruits available in the garden, and roaring very beautifully, trumpeting the elephants. And hearing this elephant's trumpet, the elephant is so huge, this is the king of all elephants. He is so huge and so imposing that even the lions and the tigers are afraid. They run away listening to the trumpeting of this king of elephants. And because of this, the weaker animals like the porcupines and hyenas and monkeys and even bears and deers, they all are now free because they are not worried of the wild beasts that can hunt them down, and so they are roaming freely while the wild beasts are running out of fear. And surrounded by these elephants, his whole herd, his whole tribe, with female elephants followed by the young elephants, this giant elephant, this huge elephant Gajendra, who was walking like a king, carrying his huge weight, was playing there, and soon enough he got thirsty. So, once he got thirsty, he got the smell of the fragrant breeze carrying the flowers that are floating in the lake nearby. So, he goes to the lake along with his family for a nice picnic where they can also quench their thirst and have fun in the water. So they all enter the water and bathe in the water, and the elephant is so happy. He is quenching his thirst, drinking the water, and he is feeding his family with water. He is taking this clear and nectar like water, and this water is perfumed with the pollen of the lotuses that are floating in the water, the lilies that are floating. And so, this fragrant, clear water he takes in his trunk and he feeds the other elephants. He splashes it on them in the way of sport, and they are all having great fun there. So, all of this can be seen also as a beautiful symbolism of how one enjoys sensual pleasure to the max with his family attached to them, and thinking that this is the height of pleasure and this is going to last forever. So, the king of elephants, unrivaled with mighty power, physical strength, leading all the elephants there. the whole family literally worshipping him, and the whole herd of elephants treating him as their leader and respecting him, and he taking care of them, considering himself mighty and strong, and being very playful with them, at the same time taking care of them, is having fun and sporting in the water. And at this moment, it is said that an extremely powerful alligator, a crocodile, suddenly seized this elephant by its foot. And this mighty elephant, which is thinking itself invincible in every way, and the whole herd is looking up to him, suddenly is caught by this alligator and he is not able to move. He is suddenly fallen into adversity. In a moment, everything has vanished, all the power, all the fun, all the sporting. Suddenly, one moment, because of this giant alligator holding his foot, he is suddenly shrieking in pain miserably and fighting. And all the other elephants who are nearby, they are all trying to help him out. But the alligator is so powerful that they are not able to do anything to help this elephant. They are helplessly watching, they are trying their best, they couldn't do anything, and then they just helplessly watch. While this giant elephant is in such pain, and not only pain outwardly but inwardly as well, because he was considering himself the caretaker of the whole herd, and before all of them, he is crying now. This elephant, this great king who never shed tear ever, who was always a picture of strength for his young ones, for his wives, and for the whole herd, who was always seen as an epitome of courage and valor, he is crying, and therefore he is not only hurting badly physically, but he is also, his ego is completely destroyed, because he is now seen in his weakest, most vulnerable moment by the whole herd which has worshipped him, and they are completely perplexed because they don't know what to do. They have considered him to be their master, to be the great source of their strength, and they see him crying in pain, unable to extricate himself from this alligator, and they are also not able to help him. They are confused both at their inability to help him and at the unexpected sight of their king crying like this. And this struggle is going on. This struggle is going on for a long time between the elephant and the alligator. But the alligator is only gaining in strength, because it is always said every animal has its strength in its natural habitat. The natural habitat of the alligator is water, whereas the water is not the natural habitat for the elephant. So the elephant, without any food, without any strength now, is fighting hard but losing its power. It's losing its vitality, its strength. The alligator is only gaining in power, being in its own habitat, and it's holding the elephant stronger and stronger. And the elephant is slowly and surely losing its grip and unable to be even fight this alligator. And at this moment, when this happens, the Lord of the Elephants now is facing death straight in its eye. So, this is the moment that this elephant is now coming face to face with death. It's feeling powerless, incapable of liberating itself. And at this moment, when it recognizes that nobody can extricate me, no one, I don't have the power, my kith and kin don't have the power, my herd has no power, none of the female elephants have any power. I'm completely caught in this alligator which has come by providence, which has come by destiny, and I'm completely helpless. And at this moment, this mighty elephant suddenly wakes up to surrender to the Supreme Lord, because this elephant, there is a past life of this elephant which will come in the subsequent episode, where this elephant was a mighty king called Indradyumna, and due to various follies, even though this king was a very devoted king to the Lord, he had to be born as an elephant, and because of his qualities as a king, he continued as the ruler, as the king of all elephants, mighty. And yet the seed of devotion never goes waste. So that remained somewhere deep in his heart. And at this moment, it woke up. And this elephant now recognized instantly, though this whole life it has been engaged in being the king of elephants, thinking itself invincible, and lording over the whole territory, suddenly, in this moment of helplessness, he wakes up and he recognizes that the Almighty Lord is the only source of protection and the only source of refuge for one who is completely helpless. And with this attitude, he recognizes and he says, "Let me turn to the Supreme Being and surrender completely unto Him." And his surrender now will be expressed as a beautiful prayer, and that prayer will come in the next chapter. But before we conclude this chapter, what is important to notice here is the symbolism involved in the story, which is extremely relevant to everyone. Everyone who is doing well, especially, thinks he is the master of his domain. He has everything under control, with all the family behind him, friends and people following him, and people at work following him, and being respected in society, and all the rest. And everything seems to go well, and yet in one instant, the alligator, in the form of, it can be a major disease, it can be an accident, it can be an unexpected event, it can be a layoff. The alligator represents the unexpected event that always comes and strikes one at the most vulnerable moment, where all his power, all his strength, all his wealth is not able to protect him. Neither is his friends, family, nobody able to protect him, and he is helpless. And at this moment, all that remains, if one has the seed of devotion, is the surrender to the Supreme Lord, and otherwise, there is only tremendous fear, even in the most otherwise worldly successful person. So, this is the essence of the symbolism behind the story. So, Gajendra, being a being which has the seed of devotion, therefore, despite being caught in this helpless situation, as Shankara says, that's why in Bhajagovindam, everything can be taken away in one moment. Ma kuru dhanajana yavvana garvam harati nimeshat kala sarvam. Any pride over wealth, power, family, is time can take it away in one moment. And that's exactly what the alligator represents, time itself. The time that gradually ebbs away, but then at some time, at some instance, the time takes this giant form like the alligator, which comes and strikes with unexpected ferocity, and one is able to completely incapable of defending oneself. And at this moment, one can either completely succumb to that moment or see that alligator as grace itself. Because for this elephant, as we can see, this alligator is grace eventually, ultimately, because without this, he was completely oblivious, thinking himself the lord of the whole island and roaming around with arrogance and pride. And it is the alligator that came and reminded him of his frailty, of his impermanence, and thereby recognized that the only recourse, the only thing that's eternal, is the Supreme Being, and awoke in him the seed of devotion that was there. So the alligator, though outwardly causing him great harm, is the instrument of grace that awakens the devotion in this elephant. And therefore, any suffering that comes, which is similar to this alligator, it can be seen as causing great pain outwardly, but if seen correctly, it is a source of grace, for it can awaken the sense of complete surrender in the heart. So this is the symbolism behind how the alligator awakens the seed of devotion that is there in the elephant. And that is the other aspect of this, is that without the seed of devotion, the elephant would have been completely lost and cried and simply died. But because of the seed of devotion, the elephant was able to tap into that in that critical moment. And this is why any sadhana, any inquiry, any devotion performed at any time never goes waste. It comes alive at the right moment. And therefore, this is the most important activity to be engaged in. And that's the other lesson of this story so far. Now the elephant will offer a beautiful prayer to the Supreme Being, called as Adi Moolam, the original source, the source of all. And the elephant, most beautifully, will not ask for its life to be saved, but will simply recognize that you are the only source of everything, and you have sent this alligator, and you have given everything there is, and therefore whatever you choose to do is your supreme will, and I completely surrender unto you. And thereby the elephant represents the highest sense of surrender to the Supreme Lord, and that will be expressed in a most beautiful prayer in the next chapter. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.